Hello, welcome everyone to this session dedicated to the role of electrolyzers and workforce in the EU's race to net zero. A little bit change of plan, but we adjust as the hydrogen ecosystem is adjusting as well. We will start directly with a panel after a few words of introduction. And I would like to share with you a few highlights regarding electrolyzers. I know that by the end of 2024, projection for the European electrolyzer manufacturing capacity should reach, it's still provisional, 10.1 gigawatt per year. Within the Clean Hydrogen Partnership that I'm leading, we have played a pivotal role in supporting electrolysis research and innovation, funding 230 million euros to 61 projects since our inception. When we look at the numbers, on paper, it's impressive. But the market apparently tells a different story. And that's what we're going to address today with our distinguished speakers. We have gigafactories, thanks to IPCEI in a way. Gigafactories are under construction. Some are already nearly completed, but we're still lacking orders. We're still lacking off-takers. And hydrogen supply and demand are, of course, connected. So when you have one and not the other, then you have an issue. So we know that in the Draghi report, there was a mention that Europe has the foundation in place to be a highly competitive economy. So it's all about competitiveness, resilience, and growth. And that's what we're going to tackle with my distinguished speakers this afternoon. So I would like to call on stage Christophe Norès, Executive Director, Green Hydrogen ThyssenKrupp Nucera. Welcome, Christophe. Roeland Baan, President and CEO, Topsoe. Andreas Lippert, Vice President and General Manager, Electrolysers, Accelera by Cummins. Dr. Beate Grota, Executive Vice President Engineering Power Solution, Robert Bosch. And Philippe Offenberg, Director, Breakthrough Energy. Okay, so let me share with you the rule of the game. It hasn't changed, huh? But I'm going to ask you a few questions. Don't hesitate to interact. We would love this panel to be as interactive as possible. So if you have an idea, you want to complement someone else's idea, just go. Okay? So first question to all of you, except for Breakthrough Energy. I have a specific question to you. Okay? But how will you qualify your electrolyzer technology as uniquely contributing to advancing Europe's decarbonizing target and at the same time addressing global competitiveness? And in the same sense, what is your added value? What is your unique differentiated approach from others in the market? This one is a little bit more difficult. Might be confidential. You can say joker if you like. But if you could try to address both. So who jumps in cold water?
I can.
Okay, Roland.
Because it's very easy for me. We are the only ones with a different electrolyzer technology in this group here, which is based on solid oxide. And it's basically the newest boy on the block. Alkaline and PEM are ancient compared to SOEC. And what's the differentiation and why does it make electrolysis competitive in Europe is the efficiency. So a typical alkaline electrolyzer needs 55 kilowatt hours per kilo of hydrogen, and our solution needs 35. So in an environment where, first of all, green electrons are scarce, and secondly, they are very expensive, that's an enormous advantage.
Beate, Christopher,
Maybe
Andreas?
I can continue. So yeah, we are supplying alkaline water electrolysis modules, 20 megawatts. I think we have proven as ThyssenKrupp nucera over the last years that we were quite successful. We have a good product in place, which is already scaled. We have currently more than 3.5 gigawatts under execution. And we say what we are bringing in this is our experience in the electrolysis business as well as in the chemical plant business, because the electrolyzers are built at the end of the day into a facility which is very close to a chemical facility. And I think this experience we have as a company, we have the experience with customers, how to tackle this, how to design, how to engineer such plants. I think that we are bringing with that, with a security to deliver such huge scale projects. And with that, I would just share some thoughts I did already this morning. So we are building NEOM on the one.
Just for the audience, because they might not know, there was a meeting this morning from the Electrolyzer coalition, or I don't know how you, what is the real coalition? Yeah. And so they discuss a lot, and that was a good introduction to our panel this afternoon. So any scoop will be welcome.
Yeah. So thank you for that clarification. And beside NEOM, we are also doing here, if you talk about Europe, we're talking about H2 Green Steel now called Stegra. And if you're there, you can see it's a huge, massive plant, and you can see what is your impact, what is we as electrolyzer suppliers, what is our impact on the green transformation? We are one of the key elements for it. Not the only one, or one of the key elements. And it gives a huge opportunity for growth, either for component suppliers like us here, but also if you see such a construction site, it's a huge industrial infrastructure site, a huge investment, and it shows green transformation is a huge chance for Europe to put further growth in our industry. Many people just see the drawback of high energy costs. On the other side, it's a huge opportunity for those both fields, component manufacturing as well as infrastructure program. In addition to that, as you said, you have SOC technology. I'm not sure how far you are, how far we are. We have, beginning of this year, we have signed a contract with the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, IKTS in Dresden. So we are now also adding SOC technology to our portfolio, because we are seeing business cases for certain applications where you have steam, low-cost steam, to have an electrolyzer unit with roughly 20–25% less energy consumption. And that could be an extremely valid additional complementary technology. And we see the really business cases in the next 4, 5, 6 years. We can even combine alkaline technology with SOC technology.
Wonderful.
Which is actually answering your question. So we actually, our factory, 500 megawatts factory, is starting up at the end of this year, starting delivering in February, and we are already talking with NEOM to have 20 megawatts of SOC next to your solution, where we, by the way, are delivering the ammonia loop. So there's a lot of synergies. And back to the point, in Europe we have all these technologies, all this knowledge far ahead of the rest of the world. And I think we shouldn't forget that.
Okay.
So if I can quick jump
Andreas.
in, since we're going from left to right here. Cummins does, or the Accelera business unit, which is our zero emissions business unit, we do PEM electrolyzers. And to distinguish ourselves, we don't need process heat or steam. We also don't need large spaces. PEM is ideal for small, modular, but also very scalable technology that really is fully green. It's just water and electricity in, and the hydrogen, oxygen out. And I'd say one other distinguishing factor for us is we can also do oxygen at pressure, which in some cases can be really valuable, because compressing oxygen has its own risks. And so I think there's space for all these technologies to really create value and scale up the hydrogen supply chain.
Interesting to see that all of you are developing, complementary but different technology at the same time in different locations. What about Robert Bosch, Beate?
Yeah, we are quite similar in our approach. So we go for the PEM electrolyzers. as well. And I'm really fully convinced that all these different technologies have their use cases and their need, and so they are not competing with each other, but they will exist parallelly. So I'm really happy that all those technologies are there. We as Bosch are not in the electrolyzer market yet. We will have market introduction next year. And we come from the automotive business, so what we can bring is no experience in electrolyzers yet, but experience from automotive. And in automotive, you learn three things quite fast. One is really high quality from day one on, scaling even in all regions of the world, in rural areas, and to bring the cost down year by year. Because if you can't do the three things, you will die very fast in the automotive business. And this is what we took and brought into our mobile fuel cell business, what we started last year in serial production. And these competencies we would like to bring to the electrolyzers world to support the growth and the competitiveness of Europe.
So very exciting to see that even when you're not, in electrolysis right from the beginning, you have the expertise and the capabilities to be duplicated into a new area. Congratulations. Question to you, Philippe. In breakthrough energy, what role do you play in Europe's transition towards a decarbonized policy? And could you be a little bit more specific about your current portfolio of activities, and where does hydrogen technology fit into the picture?
Yeah, thank you. So Breakthrough has three financing vehicles. One of them is called Fellows, that's focused on the R&D section, helping promising researchers and teams spin out their ideas, build a company, get to venture readiness. Then there's Breakthrough Energy Ventures, that's the vehicle we're mostly known for. $3 billion of assets under management, 130 portfolio companies. Unfortunately, most of them in the US, not here. And then there's Catalyst, that's a later stage demonstration and first-of-a-kind project finance in Europe in partnership with the European Investment Bank. On hydrogen, I can highlight three things that we're doing in Europe. So there's a fellows team in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. That's called RIFT, Renewable Iron Fuel Technology. And they're using hydrogen and the rusting properties of iron to produce carbon-neutral energy for heat-intensive industries. So that's quite an innovative approach, but a rather early-stage company. Another rather early-stage team is Ferrum Technologies in Austria. They're using hydrogen plasma technology to produce carbon-free steel. And then on the venture side, that's a bit more mature, there's H2Site in Spain, and they're trying to unlock low-cost hydrogen transportation. So they're using existing pipeline infrastructure, and they're transforming ammonia into pure hydrogen on site. And the technology behind it is a membrane. So that's on the venture side. And then our Breakthrough Energy Catalyst vehicle is up and running in Europe and is always looking for good projects, hydrogen-related projects, especially in transport and industry decarbonization. I'm looking around here, refineries or other projects that are looking for blended finance grant equity approach to get them over the finish line to final investment decision. That's what we're looking for. Please reach out. And then last but not least, what I find very exciting is the idea of geologic hydrogen. There's a company, Coloma, US-based, that we're invested in. And they're basically, to put it very simply, drilling for hydrogen. So this is totally outside the green hydrogen approach that we're discussing here.
Okay, thanks. I know this morning you talk a lot about resilience, growth, competitiveness. So another question for you, and you have a few minutes each to try to deliver the key messages. We know that resilience and competitiveness are key. The more it goes, the more, the current ecosystem demonstrate that if we're not competitive enough, then we have an issue. But on the electrolyzer sector, how will you define resilience and competitiveness? And in which area of the market do you see the greatest challenges and opportunities for strengthening resilience? So maybe we can start with you, Beate.
Yeah, my pleasure. Resilience for me means that we are able to produce and deliver, and and are robust against geopolitical topics, which are increasing. And we work on this in the automotive industry, so we have global markets, but they are falling apart more and more. And this does not mean for me that it's 100% locally sourced in each and every region, but to make sure that you are free to operate, and that you have, on a contractual basis, on IP basis, on a cooperation basis with countries, the opportunity to grow independently from the geopolitical situation.
Okay.
And there are many solutions how to reach that. We can see this in many other industries as well.
Okay, so you're confident that the new rules being applied by the Hydrogen Bank will help, but can help also suppliers like your company to have this required autonomy?
Yeah. So I'm not only here for my company, so I'm in the board of Hydrogen
Yeah,
Europe,
you're
representing
I forgot
the
to
tech.
mention, you're a board member of Hydrogen Europe, so you're really, I mean, you're really the ideal person to talk about the electrolyzers and the industry as a whole.
Yeah. And so for the audience, I'm representing the tech providers from Hydrogen Europe and the board. And yes, we need the support. We see that what Hydrogen Bank applied now is very helpful, especially for tier 2, 3, and 4. So here we are in the tier 1 row, but we need a supply base of components, of materials in Europe, which needs to be developed. And those companies need support to develop the supply base, because they are the first to invest in new technologies. And now we are in generation 1 or 2, but we need to develop further to make it really cost competitive. So it's not only to be cost competitive, you touched that, not only to other electrolyzer producers around the world. There's still fossil energies we need to compete with, because you can't get the bridge between the cost of fossil energies and green hydrogen only by fundings or by taxes. This is very hard for economies to bear.
Christopher, when it comes to disruptive technology, how do you deal with reaching as soon as possible competitiveness?
Can you just repeat? Sorry, I didn't get.
When it comes to the technology that you're developing within NZIA, how do you deal with this issue of competitiveness?
Well, we very similar what Beate was saying. We have an existing supply chain. I think everybody was taught by the Ukraine-Russian war that resilience is something key. The overall stability in the global markets, availability of containers, security of transport, we have all seen over the last 2-3 years is not something given. So you need a quite distributed supply chain in Europe, in all parts of Asia, to get stability in your supply chain, and also to make your supply chain competitiveness. And I think that was where we were working all the last years. So we extended our supply chains, that we could ramp up from, I think at the very beginning we had less than a gigawatt to 1.52 gigawatt now. And with getting new suppliers in, and by the way, you mentioned the tier 2, tier 3, and further suppliers under you. I think in our supply chain we're talking about more than 100 sub-suppliers, and in principle you have to apply this kind of resilience mechanism on all those single suppliers, and many of them are very small. So you have to get into them, maybe not by investing, but by providing support, providing reservation agreements, providing tools, equipment, machines to help them to grow and to ramp up their supply chain. And that is what we have done over the last years, and we will continue like this. And in the worst case, if we see that somewhere we think that the supply chain is so critical, we also would like go into that specific control point and get that investment done there to ensure that we have a secure supply chain for that one.
Yeah, and maybe to add, shortly. For resilience, it's have really a broad supply chain, and so not only one supplier. A dual sourcing strategy is very important to increase the resilience. So from my automotive business, I know if there's any flood or stormy weather in the world, we are surely affected with a very broad supply base. And then hopefully this is not the only supplier for that component or material. So to have more than one is really important. That's why we need to build up the supply base really on a broad basis.
Yeah. If I can just
Andreas.
quick jump in, since we're a global company, we bring this perspective on global supply chains too. And I'd say the question of resilience should not be confused with isolation.
Yeah.
And so I'm really pleased there's emphasis on the sub-suppliers, on diversity of supply, and I think we have to be careful to distinguish between public funding going towards entities that are completely owned in other countries that are in some way subsidized, and it's unfair competition. By the same token, we should not confuse that with individual steps in the supply chain, in a diversified global supply chain that are outside of Europe. And so I think finding that balance is really important, to not go to isolation, but really to think holistically about what is resilience, what is actually the objective, which is to promote the European supply base within a global trade environment.
Yeah. May I go back to competitiveness, because that's where it starts. So competitors, you can do two things, right? You can say, how competitive are we to foreign Chinese electrolyzers? But it starts with, how competitive is green hydrogen to fossil? And there the answer is absolutely not. And it's logical. I mean, fossil had 150 years to develop a supply chain, where there are now 100 million barrels a day coming out of the ground, being distributed in the most efficient way and processed in mega refineries. So obviously you cannot compete with that. But then you can't compare something that destroys the climate with something that is a solution against climate change. So we will not be competitive unless you do a few things. First, and the EU is trying, but trying hard, maybe not succeeding, but trying hard, to put mandates, to have incentives, and to get carbon pricing, and get those right. And apparently we don't have them right, because if you look at FIDs in the last 12 months, there were 3, something like that. The rate of FID over announced projects is 4% in the US, in Europe. Not going fast. And then the other thing that really bugs me is that Europe is spending 150 billion a year on subsidies to fossil. I'm not talking about tax breaks, pure direct subsidies. That 150 billion would be taken away and put into developing the supply chains that you're talking about, then you have a very different equation.
Why do you think it is that we see these FIDs in refining and the refinery sector, but not in, for instance, aviation fuels or maritime?
Sorry, come again?
Why do you think we see these FIDs in the refinery sector in Europe, but not in other sectors? What did we do right there?
I think if you look at the products in refining, they are small compared to the hydrogen consumption they have, so they hardly change the equation for what comes out. In aviation, you have a very different issue, which is, do you know how many people tick the box for paying it's below 5%. So people do not even voluntarily will want to pay. So no single airline or single shipper is prepared to have a competitive disadvantage notionally, unless you put mandates.
Yeah. And Philippe, does it mean that we should consider a new way of funding projects in order to overcome this barrier of very low FID decisions?
I mean, the Commission has put forward some instruments, and maybe even too many instruments, right? I mean, we have the IPCEIs, we have the Hydrogen Bank, which arguably has some success. But what we've seen in the past with our own catalyst program was the difficulty or the impossibility of stacking these type of different revenues. I mean, we see projects that were successfully going through IPCEI. Then the hydrogen bank comes around, and you're not able to apply for that funding because you already received other funding. So my sense is that the overall direction is good. We also see some more member states going for this auction as a service mechanism. I think Lithuania, Spain, and someone else just joined the Germans in using this system, which of course makes the whole process a bit easier. But what we really need to overcome is this idea that you only can tap into one pot of money. There is a lot of public funding there, but due to these competition rules that we have, it is actually impossible to stack IPCEI funding on top of hydrogen bank funding, for instance, on top of some national funding that you might receive in some countries. So that for me would be the first thing to tackle for the new Commission.
But it's an interesting point, right? Because we have 800 billion in 22 different buckets, 800 billion euros available, versus the IRA only 400 billion. The experience in the IRA is that for every dollar appropriated, there's $6 of investment. That leverage is enormous. The EU needs to take complexity, bureaucracy out to release those funds, and with that they will release the same leverage. And ultimately that will benefit not just European industry, it benefits the overall competitiveness of Europe as a bloc.
Okay. Before I move to my next question, I need confirmation that Mrs. Drake has arrived. She's in, because I would like to call her on. She's? Okay. So I will ask you some questions, then we can carry on with Joanna Drake on stage. But very short. A clean industrial deal is on its way. I mean, that's part of a priority of our president, Ursula von der Leyen. It's nearly Christmas. What will be on your wish list for policy measure if you had one key recommendation to make to the European Commission? What will it be? And you have 1 or 2 minutes each, not more. So it's not a long wish list. Unfortunately, it's a very short one.
I think we touched this morning, and we discussed this morning whether still electrolyzers are the bottleneck for the whole green transformation. I think everybody concluded it's not. And I think we also concluded this morning that the key issue is we need FIDs. We have to push the business forward. And for having a FID, we need a business case. For business case, we need somehow a market or quotas or whatsoever that is moving the whole thing forward. And we need security for that. So we need regulation, clarity for regulation, and these must be secured so that people can tick this off in their risk matrix for their business case in FID. And I think that is a key point, and that is at the end, it's all linked with the offtake security, and this we have to deliver. And if you to add one item to that is low-cost energy, and that is the key point. And currently we are doing everything not to make that happen, and that is the reason, as you said, that they're so low. This is just a very small number of FIDs currently. There are even some projects very close to an FID just cancelled. With very serious players out there in the European industry, I think that we have to stop. So we need that clarity for the next year, and we need it soon.
Okay. Roeland.
We need market creation. We need demand creation. And the only way that you can get that, one is mandates, again, super important. The other one is incentive schemes that bridge the, as Gates call it, the green premium, I call it the fossil discount. You need to bridge that in order to be able to scale up the supply chains and get costs down. In the end, you need longevity. So these measures should not be there for a few years, they should be there for 10, 15 years, so that investors actually have the confidence to put money into this industry.
Andreas.
I agree with all the preceding. I think on the mandate specifically, I think one does need to look at a sector-by-sector approach, and that maybe needs to get more specific. but to the previous points, needs to be stringent and needs to be consistent and secure. In other words, you can bank that in 2030 it will be this, in 2035 it will be this requirement. And then on the inputs, I mean, the key question still is renewable electricity, and I think at the end of the day, for the wish list, it would be more of a single market approach across Europe as opposed to 27 individual tailoring.
100%.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of a priority as well. Simplify Europe, less process, fast to scale up.
Right.
Beate.
Yeah. So coming to the business cases, I fully agree with what the colleague said. And in addition, my wish to the regulators is put yourself in the shoes of those who made the FIDs on the different tier levels in the supply chain, because one is to have a certain likelihood to get your money back, what you're investing. That's why you're investing. The second question is, by when are you getting your money back? So 30, 35, 40 is a very, very long period. So for most companies, that's not sufficient.
Okay. Philippe, very quickly, because...
I like to put yourself in the shoes point, but I'm very afraid that we're running again into a dynamic where this Clean Industrial Deal is supposed to be launched in the first 100 days. Everyone has a wish list. We throw a wish list. Commission comes with a communication where some dots are ticked. But I mean, the benchmark this time really needs to be the Inflation Reduction Act made in China 2025, some really serious industrial policy. We cannot have another document like Green Deal, Industrial Deal from last year, or several other industrial strategy documents the Commission has put forward in the past. So I think this time we need something very serious, and I'm afraid if we're again pushing this out in the first 100 days, you cannot put yourself in the shoes of people who actually do projects. What I think they should do is take 6 months, it's even in the Draghi report, it says 6-month break at the beginning of the mandate, go talk to some project developers, go understand what the real issues are, and then come with a very good industrial strategy towards the summer, maybe. That is actually my biggest wish here.
So that's an excellent transition, and it is my pleasure to call on stage Mrs. Joanna Drake.
I apologize.
No, thank you for making here.
For really being late.
So we change the order, but maybe...
You want me to sit down?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really glad to have such a distinguished guest. Joanna Drake is Deputy Director General of DG RTD. You've been since 2005 in the European Commission. Since 2021, you're the Deputy Director General of the DG RTD. But previously, you were between 2016 and 2021 the Deputy Director General in DG Environment, and then between 2010 and 2015, you were Director for SME Entrepreneurship in DG Grow. So I think you tick all the boxes in order to share as well with our panel speakers. But first, before, and then we'll do it otherwise. Usually it should have been Mrs. Drake and reacting to your comment. It will be maybe a little bit of your additional input to Mrs. Drake. I have 2 questions for you, if I may. The first one is, I mean, you have an extensive experience in the European Commission. How will you assess the growth of the electrolyzer sector so far, and why should we consider it as a strategy technology for Europe?
First of all, apologies for my late arrival. So it is transformative because we are still at the cusp of making a real transition. And we are really, I think, looking out now for what would be the transformative technologies that will make it happen and, I would say, accelerate us towards that transition. However, from the humble beginnings, the low TRL kilowatt funding to the current gigawatt has scale manufacturing of hydrogen production. We can already call it very much of a transformative journey. I know that the speakers before me have real hands-on experience on this, but they know that when we look back, the electrolyzer sector was focused on what we could call incremental improvements. with the narrow scope of kilowatt scale applications. But it is the landscape that has shifted significantly. And I think there we needed to become strategic as a European Union. We needed to shift even more visibly towards low carbon economy. And of course, the Paris Agreement made a difference as well in this regard, because there is a global goal, if you like, of going well below the 2%, the 2 degree Celsius. But let's say that that is still on the cards, even if there's huge doubts of whether we're actually going to make it. But I think this brought about then a shift in the regulatory framework and the policy framework. And of course, it is the industry then that got the impetus, if you like, and the momentum to grow the electrolyzer sector. So of course, investments start coming in. The scaling up begins. We needed, and we saw a surge of R&D activities with the focus of improving efficiency, in particular the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, which has been formidable, I think, in this field as well. So apart from this, the Don Quixote and the EFIRA, which brought about huge differences in terms of the license increases, etc. But we also approved projects which we call IPCAs, meaning that they are projects which are important for the shall we say, evolution of Europe on hydrogen. And we had several of these, including the Hy2Infra with almost 7 billion euros that will support the deployment of 3.2 gigawatts of large-scale electrolyzers to produce renewable hydrogen. Therefore, what do we see today? What's the picture? The picture is an ecosystem that exists, that thrives, and there are numerous players, ranging from startups to established companies, contributing to the growth of the sector. So there has been a transition, and there has been a focus, I would say, also on a large-scale hydrogen production for various industries, including the transportation, the power sector, and industrial processes. But the growth of the electrolyzer sector is not only driven by the technological advancements, but also by increasing the recognition of hydrogen as a clean energy carrier. So as we in Europe transition towards low carbon economy, hydrogen is emerging as a vital component, offering a promising solution for sectors that are difficult to decarbonize, such as transportation, industry, and power generation. So electrolyzers play this significant role in this context, and of course we need much more large-scale production of green hydrogen from renewable energy sources. So we can decarbonize, and we can decarbonize to hard-to-abate sectors, but we can use also hydrogen as is used in clean fuel for transportation, for industry. We can integrate renewable energy. That is, electrolyzers can utilize excess renewable energy, providing storage solutions and enabling the efficient use of intermittent energy sources. We can, therefore, as a result, create new economic opportunities, and we can also enhance energy security as a result. In conclusion, I would say that the growth of the electrolyzer sector has been nothing short of remarkable, but we need to look into the future. And it is clear that electrolyzers will play a strategic role in Europe's transition to a low-carbon economy, offering a very promising solution for decarbonizing these hard-to-abate sectors, integrating renewable energy, creating new economic opportunities, and enhancing energy security. But of course, this means that there are a lot of still missing elements and also challenges.
That was going to be my second question. What is missing in order to accelerate the growth, and how can research and innovation, because you're from DG RTD, how can you be at the core of the next generation of electrolyzers, pushing more disruptive technology, even if we have a portfolio of already a very disruptive technology on the table?
Well, I've been hearing a little bit what the previous speakers has been talking about. It is clear that the Draghi report has featured prominently, and it's good that it has, because we need more of that and more bigger and quicker. And I think with the added, shall we say, mantra, it has become that research and innovation should be at the heart of competitiveness. I think this is exactly where we need to make sure that we are joined up. So if we had to list what are the remaining challenges, I would say that if the vision of the future in Europe is about competitiveness, is about resilience, then I would say, in particular in the electrolyzer sector, we need to reduce costs, first and foremost, because this is the essence of becoming competitive. And reduce costs vis-à-vis what? Vis-à-vis the fossil fuel-based power generation. Secondly, we all know that competitiveness means scalability. So there has been indicators that some companies have managed to bring about scalability in the production of electrolyzers. But of course, much more needs to be done in Europe. And I think I emphasize this, that it has to be done in Europe to ensure that mass production can meet the demands of an ever-growing market. Thirdly, I think with competitiveness comes standardization as well, meaning that if we do not standardize, then this will, I would say, grossly hinder the catalyzing run towards the upscaling. Grid integration, electrolyzers need to be integrated into the power grid in a way that ensures stable and efficient operation. This is, I think, what all of us look for: stability, security, efficiency. But at the same time, we have to, in doing so, take into account the variability of the renewable energy sources. The hydrogen infrastructure itself, I think, needs to be more robust, because it needs to include storage facilities, it needs to integrate transportation, it needs to also have refueling stations, which is essential for the widespread adoption of hydrogen fuel cells. Now, of course, if you tell me what we need to do with R&I, apart from all this, which obviously weighs heavily on the industry, of course we need to keep on investing heavily and making sure we have a good budget for R&I going forward, which is something that, of course, we all are looking towards, which is the Commission's proposal next summer, and we are working towards that, and we have to keep on ensuring that this main pillar, if you like, of our energy security, reliability, also the evolution that we mentioned earlier towards much more of decarbonizing even the less abated industries, I think this means more investment, but not only from the public purse, but also from the private industry.
Okay, thank you. Just before you join us on stage, I was asking our speakers, you have 4 representatives from top leading companies, so NZIA, ThyssenKrupp, Topsoe, Cummins, and then Bosch, and then we have Breakthrough for Energy as a funding investor, and I ask them what will be your wish list, and we talk a lot about accelerating the percentage of FID, going for a single market, simplification in the process, more clarity and visibility in order to mitigate the risk and secure the investment. But then I turn to you as panelists, and we have 6 minutes remaining. What will be your message? Because there was a big meeting, a big Electrolyzers summit this morning, so I'm sure you've agreed upon key messages and key actions on which the European Commission could be very supportive. Who wants to start?
So I'll start and just say I think my message this morning also was it's really about scale. If we don't get to scale, we don't get to competitiveness. And to get to scale, you need the demand, you need the offtake. And that offtake is business cases that work, that have a stable risk profile. And then your inputs also need to be competitive, meaning renewable electricity. And we all agree hydrogen's value really is in this complementary part with renewable electricity. But the input really needs to be less constrained and really focused on ramping up. And I think if there's one lesson we can take from solar and batteries in China is they weren't hyper restrictive on exactly how to do it. They were focused on scale. And I think we have to be less restrictive and more focused on scale across the value chain. And you mentioned storage, pipelines, the whole ecosystem needs to be built out. It's not just electrolyzers.
Maybe I can chip in.
Roeland from Topsoe.
You mentioned that you understand that there are a number of companies now that can deliver electrolysis at scale. Yes, we can. There's no market to deliver it into. And that's the problem. So we have been building up, amongst others, on the basis of the ambition of the EU to have 10 million tons of green hydrogen produced by the end of the decade domestically in Europe. But there are no FIDs that make that happen. And what we need is a market creation. And given the fact that we are not competitive with fossil, and we will not be competitive with fossil for a long time to come, we need to have the right policies coming from the Commission to build that demand. And that is mandates, and a few mandates, supported by incentives, and a just carbon pricing. Because currently the EU subsidizes fossil with 130 billion a year, rather than actually charge the cost of the carbon emitted.
Christopher?
Principle, I think everything was said. Maybe one clear sentence. Let's accept a little bit more Wild West style of ramping up the market, and then we can regulate the market if it's there in 5 to 10 years. I think that is would be my request in 2 sentences. But also I would like to say a thank you to the Commission, because we received the Innovation Fund funding for SOC technology, and I also would say hey, thank you. I think that's the right way to support technology and innovation. That is one of the elements as well we have to continue in the next years.
Philippe, Beate, anything?
Yeah. So you did not leave so many topics left. That is what we're discussing since 9:30 in the morning. Maybe to pick one point, so we are really thankful, the whole community is thankful for the fundings we got from Europe, or Team Europe. But from my global responsibility and experience, I can say to apply for fundings in, for example, North America with the Inflation Reduction Act, I need maybe 1 or 2 persons. In Europe, I need a whole team or a department just to make the application. And this is really, we have quite complex processes. And maybe big companies like ours can do, but I really take care for the smaller ones. It's sometimes really a hard burden, and it's more complex compared to other regions in the world.
If I may, I mean, simplification was already introduced and is being introduced this year in the Clean Hydrogen Partnership when it comes to fundings, because we are adopting the lump sum process, which will make your life much easier. It doesn't solve the application process, but in terms of report and management, it will definitely make your life easier. And we decide within the GU to go 100% for lump sum. Okay?
But may I just one point, because we have this experience. We had a application for the Innovation Fund that was 700 pages and took 18 months to come. And thank you very much. We got a fantastic grant. We did the same for the IRA. It was ultimately 35 pages, and it took 3 months to get the tax credits approved.
And
Philippe, before we move to our last speaker.
Public money and the smart use of it. Not everything needs to be a subsidy. I think in that regard, the Draghi report is often misunderstood. What we very much liked was when the EIB presented their counter-guarantee program last year for the wind sector that enabled them to ramp up their production, deliver on their order books. And we now saw announcements, and that's important for scale-up companies, so everyone who comes up with a new electrolyzer technology, for instance, We saw the EIB is now looking into loan guarantees to help these emerging companies, emerging technologies get access to loans. And I hope very much that will be approved by the EIB board, because that could be a game changer for all the new companies, the new kids on the block that will try to enter the market quite soon.
Okay, so please stay on stage because we still have last speaker. But first, I think they all deserve a huge round of applause.
Thank you.
And it is my pleasure now to call on stage Beate Hübschen, Managing Director of Saarland Hydrogen Agency. Beate, you've been appointed since May 2023, Managing Director of his institution. The floor is yours for, I think, 4 or 5 minutes. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Valerie, for the introduction. Good afternoon. It's now my honor to do the closing remarks for this inspiring session. Thank you all very much for the points you made. We were talking about resilience, and I heard a lot of talk about EU regulation, about funding, but I also heard a lot about R&D, technologies, different technologies, whether they are competing or not. We heard about transition, disruptive technologies, disruptive events in the market. And this is the situation we are facing now, and we need to tackle this. And so I would like to add another aspect on the resilience discussion that has not been discussed in depth in your round, and this is a skilled workforce. For all those developments we just heard, and to come over this, we need skilled people to be able to do it. We need to build a whole new value chain. It has just been mentioned. So we actually need people who are able to build it. And this is not only the specialists, we need to develop the new technologies, but it's people physically building up a value chain in construction. So we need to qualify a broad range of people with a various set of skills in being able to handle hydrogen, to make it a safe and secure energy source. And on the other hand, we also need these highly skilled people who are able to develop this technology and to keep Europe at the position of being a leader in innovation and technology development. And in order to achieve both, we need access to education for everybody. We need to tackle the talent that is in Europe and make the best out of it, but we also need to attract educated people from outside of Europe, because we all know the population is shrinking, and the need for skilled labor is increasing. So these are very important points to have skilled labor available. And finally, I do not want to forget that point. It's not really directly related to skilled labor, but we also need to inform the population and keep them on track what is going on and convince them about hydrogen. So it is another important point to me that everybody is convinced that hydrogen is a solution and is a safe solution, because only if we have the whole population on our side, we can really succeed with the hydrogen business. Thank you very much.